Teachers are set to make their way to matric marking centres next week. And the question is, how will they be affected by the curfew and the increased regulations? And for some answers on this, we're joined by the department's Director General, that's Mr. Mathanzima Mweli, and he joins us from Pretoria. DG, a very good afternoon to you. Yesterday, the spokesperson of the Department of Basic Education, Elijah Mhlanga, tweeting that the education sector sits under the considerable strain as teachers are dying of COVID-19. The current situation, how would you go about explaining how the teachers are going to cope with this element that there are these restrictions and they are going to go and congregate at these exam centers to try and mark the papers?
Good afternoon, colleague. Good afternoon to us. Thank you very much for appointing us. Well, we regret the tragic demise of teachers who are part of our communities, part of broader society, where we all come. Yes, indeed. I expected the directives issued in the regulations and the appeal made by the president. I must say that the basic education sector was one of those sectors that first applied 50% or less capacity of its facilities when we went back to schooling after lockdown. So we're still going to continue with that, but we're going to heighten compliance on basic health and safety protocols. We've been working through the month of December, working with provinces to prepare the sector for that. I've been to Mpumalanga, visited one marking center in December, and I've also been to Limpopo, visited 3 marking centers there. I visited 5 marking centers in Gauteng to check the level of compliance. And the exam team has been working flat out to make sure that we go more than what is required by the regulations issued today by the Minister of COGTA, and we ensure strict adherence to the directives issued by the President. And the cardinal message, Tony, throughout what the President has been saying in these family meetings, including the regulations that are issued, is strict adherence to the health and safety protocols. If we all adhere to the health and safety protocols, I'm quite confident that marking centers won't be sites of infections, but instead people will feel safer in the marking centers. We have appointed the COVID-19 compliance officers. I was quite pleased to see that we even have isolation rooms in these marking centers. A marking room, which ordinarily would take about 30 learners and more, is now designated to take not more than 20 on average, 15 markers to ensure strict adherence to health and safety requirements.
Very, very detailed there, DG, in explaining what you are calling these heightened levels of adherence to COVID-19. But there is another tweet of the department's spokesperson. And of course, the reason we would want to ask you questions based on what he's been saying is that he speaks for the department. And so, in a way, he is an authority somewhat. He also tweets that at this rate, we have a massive problem ahead of us when schools reopen. And he goes on to say schools might not have teachers as a direct result of COVID-19. Are you aware of exactly what the spokesperson is alluding to there?
Clearly, I'm aware, and I've been in constant interaction with our spokesperson. That's why when I started, I said we regret the tragic demise of teachers who passed on. This data has been fed to our spokesperson and is interacting with facts as they are presented on a day-to-day basis. We are indeed concerned about the impact that this is immediately going to have on the national task of marking the National Senior Certificate scripts. But we're also concerned with the fact that we might struggle come the reopening of schools with getting every teacher for every learner in every classroom with the rate at which teachers have been passing on. These are facts that are fed through to us, and the spokesperson was interacting with those facts. But we are working with provinces to make sure that we take heed of what comes from the regulations, and we immediately ensure that we heighten our health and safety requirements.
Yeah. DG, if memory serves me well, the Minister of Basic Education, when she made her last briefing to the nation, I think she made mention that the matriculants are going to be expected back at school, I think, at the completion of marking. And if that is true, that may mean that the matriculants are going to have to be required to go to school before the 15th of January. And what will the implications be around that? You'll correct me, of course, if I'm wrong.
Well, the official date for the reopening of schools is the 25th of February. School management team, together with teachers, will be reporting on the 25th, and learners will be reporting on the 27th of February. And the results will be released by the minister evening of the 22nd, and MECs will be releasing the results morning of the 23rd of February. So until then, learners would still be at home. There are schools that out of own volition would start schooling before the official date for reopening. Some of them would start immediately after New Year. Some would start a week after New Year. We know those schools, there's a tradition that has been established there, but the official opening for the reopening of schools, for reopening of public schools, is the 25th, and independent schools will be reopening on the 13th of January.
That's exactly my point, and thank you for that correction, DG, because I suspect I was talking about the private schools whose teachers, my understanding, they are, at least the management teams, are going to go back on the 4th, and then I think pupils are expected to return on the 11th. With the heightened restrictions that come with level 3 of the lockdown, what are the implications there for private schools given the kind of restrictions that are there in as far as people in the same room, as much as there is ventilation, but there are those restrictions, of course. Are you satisfied with the level of preparedness for private schools?
First, the direction will apply, Dolly, in terms of adherence to health and safety requirements. And the stipulations are very clear, and we believe that they are still relevant even in terms of the resurgence of the virus. And therefore, we expect all schools to adhere to the directions and even more the regulations that are issued now. And in fact, as I said earlier on, the issue of operating at half the capacity or less of education facilities is a notion that we introduced immediately when we went back to schooling after lockdown. So many of our schools are used to operating at that capacity, and it helps to ensure that the strict adherence to social or physical distancing but also making sure that health and safety requirements are strictly adhered to. Our officials will be monitoring the reopening of independent schools. They'll also be monitoring the reopening of public schools to ensure that there is strict adherence to this. As you would be aware, public representatives would also be going out to monitor the reopening of schools. And this time around, what would be put first will be the notion of health and safety. We'll be talking about health and safety first, before we even think about making sure that all our learners are learning, that they are received by a healthy and a very safe environment that applies to teachers and the non-teaching staff as well.
Yeah.
So that safety will be a priority.
Yeah, DJ, I'm glad you mentioned health and safety first when looking at the issue of reopening schools, because private schools, they probably have taken care of that situation. But when it comes to public schools, we know, for example, that in provinces like Limpopo, there were schools that simply had to shut down almost indefinitely because these measures, health and safety measures, simply could not be met. Is that what we probably going to see in the new year 2021 when that time comes?
Well, Toli, let me say that when we reopened schools after lockdown, schools that could not comply with health and safety requirements had to be kept closed until they were able to do so. But over a week to about 2 weeks, all of those schools came on board. There is no school in any of the provinces that could not reopen because they could not meet health and safety requirements. The instruction was very clear. If a school is unable to meet health and safety requirements, they cannot reopen, and learners had to be redirected to other schools until the school would be able to meet the health and safety requirements. What we are doing at the moment is to make sure that when schools reopen, all of them are able to meet the health and safety requirements. We had several meetings in November and December. One of the meetings was to even report to the portfolio committee and the select committee about our level of readiness or preparedness for the reopening of schools. We've had one-on-one meetings with individual provinces to bring us up to speed about their state of preparedness. And we can confidently say that the system is ready. We have follow-up meetings before the 25th to just ensure that all the 25,000 schools are indeed ready to adhere to the health and safety requirements. This time around, we're going to even do more than what we did.
DJ, final question to you as I let you go. The date for the 2020 matriculants, I should say, for them to hear whether or not they've passed the year, and what should we make of the integrity and credibility of the 2020 senior certificate. It's a point that was decried by the Minister of Education, Basic Education, on the back of the court case, of course, that you lost.
Well, the results will be released by the Minister on the 22nd of February. And on the 20th, Umalusi will make a pronouncement around matters relating to integrity, credibility, and reliability of the exams. And until then, my humble appeal to all of us is that let's not try and second guess Umalusi, but let's patiently wait for that moment when Umalusi will declare the results.
That's the Director General at Basic Education Department, Mr. Mathanzima Mweli. Thank you very much for your time.